With internal matters largely settled, the demon finally turned his gaze outward toward the rest of human space and began plotting to seize the throne of the First Lord. Fully aware that the Capellan Confederation armed forces were in no condition to conduct large-scale operations, Maximilian leaned on the one tool he had mastered: espionage. Before initiating his plans, Maximilian invested significant state resources into the Maskarovka, granting them greater autonomy in their operations. In the early 2990s, he set his sights on the Free Worlds League. Capellan agents methodically infiltrated the Merrick bureaucracy. Initially, the Maskarovka focused on sowing dissent among the lesser nobility. For instance, the Dame of Assumption, Val Mintain, signed a secret treaty with the Capellans. In this agreement, should Mintain declare independence, the Capellan Confederation would immediately recognize the Grand Duchy of Assumption and provide military support for its defense. This plan, however, never materialized, as no declaration of independence has ever occurred. Nonetheless, such agreements illustrated just how deeply the Lao web had penetrated Merrick governance. But the most significant infiltration by far involved Anton Merrick, Janus Merrick's young brother, Duke of Procyon, and commander of the Capellan front. It was widely known that Anton aspired to take his brother's place as Captain General. The two had clashed repeatedly over political and military matters. Beginning in 3003, Maximilian met with Anton in secret. The demon proposed a deal. He would supply Anton with materiel, personnel to train his underground forces, and advisors for his council. In return, Anton would launch a war against his brother to seize power. To further entice him, Maximilian promised his daughter Candace's hand in marriage should Anton succeed, intending to control him through this alliance and, by extension, dominate the Free Worlds League. Captivated by the plan, Anton agreed. Over the next decade, he quietly built his forces. In 3014, he launched his campaign, triggering the Merrick Civil War. True to his word, Maximilian supported Anton through the mysterious Wolfsdragoons mercenaries. The Dragoons spearheaded the rebellion, securing victory after victory. These successes drew more supporters to Anton's cause and expanded his army, but also inflated his ego. Over time, Anton grew overconfident, began overruling his generals, and micromanaged the campaign. Progress soon ground to a halt. As the tide turned against him, Anton ordered the Wolfsdragoons to disperse and integrate into his forces. Jamie Wolf, their commander, refused, citing that contract. Enraged, Anton had Jamie's brother, Joshua, and 27 other Dragoon members arrested and later executed. Unsurprisingly, this triggered open rebellion by the Dragoons, culminating in Anton's downfall. Though the gambit ultimately failed, it came at no cost to the Confederation. Not a single Capellan life or world had been lost, only those of the Free Worlds League. Content with this, Demon focused his attention to his next enemy. During the decade that Anton Merrick was building his forces, the Demon turned his attention to the Davions. As before, Lao agents infiltrated the upper echelons of Davion governance and worked to sow dissent, particularly among nobles residing near the Kurita border. This time, however, the Maskarovka succeeded in establishing contact with pro-Lao factions within the Davion court, enabling them to funnel financial support to these groups and push Capellan-friendly agendas within the Federated Sun's bureaucracy. Real physical damage began in earnest around the year 3000. Maskarovka agents launched a series of sabotage operations, primarily targeting industrial and research centers across Federated Suns, with the goal of critically undermining their war capabilities. Notable missions include the destruction of a major ore refinery on Axton in 3001, the formation of rebel cells in the Kamal and Andro systems in 3003, and the 3015 abduction of 7 geneticists from Sanelak. These scientists were forced to work on Operation Doppelganger, a covert project aimed at cloning Hans Davion and replacing him with a duplicate. After a decade of work, the clone was ready, and in 3025, the operation was set in motion. It came close to succeeding, but ultimately failed when the clone was discovered. But that may be a story for another day. The Lao Davion front likely saw the highest concentration of mercenaries during the Third Secession War, with entire careers and lives forged and ended along that contested border. For the Capellans, mercenaries were essential for survival, as their military had never fully recovered from ongoing attrition. For the Federated Sons, mercenaries offer a strategic advantage. They allowed Davion leadership to commit regular forces to confront the more formidable Draconis Combine. The Capellan front, seen as a secondary concern, was typically staffed with lighter or less experienced units. Hans Davion, fully aware that a growing internal unrest was orchestrated by Lao, launched a limited offensive against the Confederation in 3015. In response to the demon's subterfuge, he deployed mercenary units along the Capellan border. These raids became increasingly frequent, and by 3018, at least one incursion occurred each month. In 3019, St. Ives was attacked by elements of Kingston's commandos and Tristram's terrorists. The defending St. Ives armored cavalry was nearly overwhelmed, but the timely arrival of warrior House Kamata and Lushan turned the tide, annihilating the invaders. The boldest attack came in 3022, when 2 regiments of Smithon's Chinese bandits successfully landed on and assaulted Xi'an itself, the capital of the Capellan Confederation. It was a clear message from Hans Davion to the demon that he was not beyond reach. These in the day when heaven was falling, the hour when earth's foundations fled, followed their mercenary calling and took their wages and are dead. Their shoulders held the sky suspended, they stood and earth's foundations stay. What God abandoned, these defended, and saved the sum of things for pay. The attack on Xi'an was the final straw for Maximilian, driving him at last to retaliate with violence. The demon summoned the Capellan Confederation's elite mercenary force, McCarron's armored cavalry, commonly known as the Big Mac, to exact revenge on House Davion. Although the Big Mac will later become synonymous with Capellan service, they had only recently entered Maximilian's employ. When they accepted his contract, Maximilian welcomed the prestigious outfit with open arms. He granted them access to the Confederation's main supply network and gifted them a permanent base on Menk, a tremendous boon to the unit, which was then struggling financially. With such substantial backing, the Big Mac will remain loyal to Lao's service from that point forward. The demon ordered them to strike at Davion's space and granted them full autonomy in executing the campaign. Archibald McCarron devised a 3-year plan, launching successive attacks deep inside Davion territory. The strategy was designed to simulate a major offensive, creating chaos that would compel the AFFS to redeploy forces, ideally from the Cretan front, thus weakening their primary line of resistance. The operation began with McCarron securing multiple transport vessels, prepositioned at rendezvous points across Davion's space. He then split his 5 regiments into 3 strike groups. The first wave commenced with simultaneous assaults on Tawas, Farwell, and Cathil. Tristram's terrorists were stationed on Tawas and were seemingly wiped out, never to be mentioned again. On Farewell, the Big Mac destroyed major ore refineries. At Cathil, Archibald personally led 2 regiments against the 42nd Avalon Hussars. Driven by personal animosity, McCarron sought to annihilate the unit. However, the 42nd managed to scatter and survive until reinforcements arrived. The second wave followed swiftly, targeting McHenry and Muskegon. At McHenry, the mercenary unit Matthias's forlorn hope was on rest and refit when the Big Mac struck. Caught off guard, 2/3 of their forces was eliminated before they could mount a defense. The survivors surrendered and were later released in exchange for 4 Crusader mechs. Muskegon, however, marked the first setback. The local militia commander sensed something was amiss and ordered enhanced defenses. When the Big Mac arrived, they met unexpected resistance and were forced to withdraw earlier than planned. Nonetheless, McCarron's forces destroyed the plant's entire harvest before retreating. The regiments regrouped and launched an assault on Marlette, aiming for the seemingly impregnable fortress of Bourgogne. A 3-day siege followed. Though the fortress held and the Big Mac suffered notable losses, the psychological objective, spreading fear and uncertainty, was achieved. The final wave began in 3023. One regiment targeted a mech repair facility on Goshen, while others struck agricultural centers on Emerson and Smolensk. The next target was Beton Kaitos, where they encountered elements of Hans Davion's personal guard. The Big Mac was decisively repelled over 2 days, though their mobility spared them from catastrophic losses. They then landed on Bristol, conducting a week of intrusive but non-destructive operations, a diversion meant to lure defenders away from the true objective, Listowel. To reinforce the ruse, the Big Mac left behind salvage marauders, misleading the incoming Davion force. Meanwhile, the main force quickly redeployed to Listowel, where they overwhelmed the weakened garrison, raided a key supply depot, and proceeded to their final targets, Myra and Messertim. The operation was a resounding success and reignited Capellan morale. Maximilian awarded the Big Mac the Confederation's highest military honors and promised landed titles upon retirement. Amid the national celebration, the demon seized the opportunity to eliminate the final dissenters within his court. Though McCarron's war served as the primary retaliation against House Davion, it was not the only measure taken. While the campaign was underway, Maximilian Lau initiated a series of secret meetings with Michael Hazak Davion, the brother-in-law of First Prince Hans Davion. Michael was married to Mary Davion, Hans's eldest sister. However, as the daughter of an unwedded union between Andrew Davion and Simone St. Clair, Mary had been bypassed in the line of succession. Michael's relationship with Hans echoed that of Janos and Anton Marek, tense and laced with resentment. Like Anton, Michael harbored ambition to become First Prince and even nurtured a hidden animosity toward the Davion family. In 3013, Michael became the Duke of New Syrtis and overall commander of the Capellan March, a collection of systems bordering the Capellan Confederation. He viewed the March as his personal domain and believed that Hans was steadily eroding his authority. Recognizing this tension, Maximilian attempted to replicate the success he had achieved with Anton Marek. Beginning in 3022, the two men held clandestine meetings and ultimately signed a secret non-aggression pact. To avoid suspicion, they even coordinated limited symbolic raids against one another, ensuring the damage remained minimal. However, Michael proved to be far more calculating than Anton. Despite Maximilian's promise, including offers to cede several Capellan systems, Michael refused to rebel. He understood the dangers. Any rebellion would likely be a trap designed to weaken the Federated Sons, leaving the Capellan March vulnerable to invasion. Moreover, the citizens of the March were staunchly anti-Capellan. No leader who openly conspired with the historic enemy could maintain legitimacy. Although the alliance never produced tangible results, both leaders were satisfied with the quiet status quo they had forged and left the arrangement as it was. By the mid-3020s, relations between the Federated Sons and the Lyran Commonwealth began to warm significantly, eventually culminating in a formal alliance. The remaining House Lords were, unsurprisingly, alarmed by the prospect of such a powerful union. If these two realms united, they would form the largest and most formidable state in human history. In response, the Draconians Combine, the Capellan Federation, and Free Worlds League signed the Concord of Captain, a defensive pact to counterbalance the emerging superpower. The Capellans and Free Worlds League in particular pledged mutual support in the event of war. With the signing of this treaty, the Third Secession War effectively drew to a close. Human space was now divided into the FedCom Alliance and the Captain Bloc, two titanic coalitions poised to hold each other in check, lest open war plunged the sphere into unprecedented devastation. It should have marked the end of the Secession Wars. It should have lifted the curse of the First Lord. But unfortunately, one man thought otherwise.